Need to watch this. This is important to the Native American people. Please listen.
Now it's time to show you some of this morning's headlines. The Washington Post reports a former campaign staffer is suing President Trump for allegedly kissing her without her consent. In a federal lawsuit, Alba Johnson claims Mr. Trump kissed her on the corner of her mouth as she turned away at a Florida campaign rally in August of 2016 when he exited an RV. She is seeking unspecified damages for emotional pain and suffering. The White House is strongly rejecting Johnson's claims as absurd and says her claims directly contradict multiple eyewitness accounts.
The Associated Press says Jerry Seinfeld is suing a California classic car dealer over a dispute involving a 1958 Porsche. The comedian's lawsuit comes after he was sued by another company. The company claims it bought a Porsche from Seinfeld for $1.5 million that turned out to be a fake. Well, Seinfeld says he bought the car from European Collectibles in 2013 and relied on that company's certificate of authenticity. European Collectibles has not commented, so a suit follows a suit.
Pretty soon, you'll have a... Never mind. The Wall Street Journal reports that the laws of supply and demand have not been repealed. Foods containing so-called healthy fats are more expensive because they're in fashion. The average price of avocados, butter, olive oil, and salmon have increased as much as 60% since 2013. There has been a broad dietary shift to natural fats. The American Heart Association says healthy fats can help lower blood pressure, reduce the risks of heart problems, and cut bad cholesterol levels.
And CBS Wichita affiliate, that's KWCH, reports a Greenville, South Carolina man bought more than $500 worth of Girl Scout cookies. Why'd he do it? So the girls could stay out of the cold. According to a Facebook post from a mother of a troop member, the man initially bought just 7 packages of cookies, but then he came back and said, I'm taking them all so y'all can get out of this cold. It was around 34 degrees at the time. The man has not been identified, but whoever he is, we like this guy.
I know. It's the season. My son last night just asked me for some money to get some Girl Scout cookies.
And you said what?
I said, of course.
Yeah. We all remember, yes, we all remember selling cookies.
That's right, and some of us have salespeople in our families.
Oh, really? I'll feel going.
Yeah, I think inventory's gone, though, so we're very happy about that. A Chinese delegation will go to Indianapolis this week to claim a massive trove of artifacts brought to the U.S. by an eccentric Indiana collector. The FBI seized about 360 ancient items from ceramics to weapons in 2014.
This is it. Listen up.
In a story you'll see only on CBS This Morning, Anna Werner reveals what else the government found. She's been working on this story for months. Anna, good morning.
Good morning. And these artifacts were part of a vast collection gathered by a man named Don Miller. He was 91 years old when the FBI showed up at his home in 2014 for what may be the largest seizure from a private collection ever. They said Miller wasn't supposed to have many of those rare and ancient items. Now we're learning some unsettling information about what else the FBI found. When the FBI showed up at Don Miller's home in rural Indiana in 2014, it was a shock for people who knew him.
He was very beloved. He was very charismatic.
Former local reporter Liz Dykes interviewed the 91-year-old former engineer about his time in World War II, his missionary work in Haiti, and most of all, his huge collection of artifacts from around the world.
The entire house is a museum. There are things everywhere. It was just mind-blowing.
Miller even gave tours of his collection. So when the FBI came calling, she says,
I wanted to know what they were looking for. There had to have been something.
There was something the FBI hasn't talked about until now.
Large. When I first went into his house and saw the size of the collection, it was unlike anything we'd ever seen.
Tim Carpenter heads the FBI's art crime unit.
Unlike anything you'd ever seen.
Not only me, but I don't think anyone even on the art crime team.
FBI photos never before shown publicly give a glimpse of the collection. Some 42,000 items, including pre-Columbian pottery, an Italian mosaic, and items from China, some that Miller labeled Chinese jewelry from 500 BC.
Roughly half of the collection was Native American, and the other half of the collection was from every corner of the globe. This piece, as you can see, it was labeled by Mr. Miller.
The problem, Carpenter says, was that the FBI found a lot of it had been illegally obtained. Miller admitted he'd gone on digging expeditions in foreign countries and around the United States for decades, in violation of antiquities laws.
Did he understand that he had obtained some things illegally?
He did.
So he admitted that.
He did.
Miller eventually agreed to let the FBI seize some 5,000 artifacts so they could be returned to their countries of origin. But Carpenter says all the FBI's careful planning couldn't prepare them for another, more disturbing discovery.
About 2,000 human bones.
2,000?
To the best of our knowledge right now, those 2,000 bones represent about 500 human beings.
Nearly all of those human remains, he says, were also dug up from ancient Native American burial sites similar to these.
Okay, that sounds like a staggering number.
It's very staggering.
Why would anybody have that many human bones?
I don't know. I truly don't know.
Native American burial sites dating back thousands of years have been a source of fascination for archaeologists for decades.
Meticulous care must be exercised.
This old government film showed the excavation of an ancient Native American village in Alabama. Over time, many other sites have been looted by people seeking artifacts and even skeletons.
This comes down to a basic human right.
Holly Cusack McVeigh is a professor of anthropology brought in by the FBI on the Miller case.
We have to think about the context of who has been the target of grave robbing for centuries, whose ancestors have been collected for hobby. And this comes down to racism.
Not only does it come down to racism, it comes down to neglect, because back a couple hundred years ago, whenever they was doing a lot of logging expeditions up in the Appalachian Mountains, they could care less about Native American burial sites, and they would plow through, pulling teams of horses, pulling great big logs through burial sites, digging up bones and skulls, and just having absolutely no respect whatsoever towards the Native American people. And for some reason, to this day, there is a great deal of people here in America that still look at the Native American people as them being some sort of instrument of discovery. Like we're some sort of alien that just got through dropping out of the sky that didn't have no right in being here. And in essence, it's just the opposite. The Europeans, the white man, the black man, and all the other people that come over here that inundated this country, that wanted to genocide the Native Americans, are the people that should be looked upon towards not being welcome over here in America. You keep in mind, it was the Native American red-blooded Indian that was here thousands and thousands and thousands of years, way before the white man ever discovered America or wanted to come to America. And for a group of people to be disrespected the way that they have been disrespected, it falls in the same category as the Jews being annihilated, desecrated, and almost completely, totally genocide off the planet Earth over in the Middle East. Why? Why has this become such of a fascination for so many people pertaining to the Native American people and also the true Jewish people pertaining to God's chosen people? Why has this become such of a fascination for these people? That's the $64,000 question. And just like the woman just said, it comes down to a discrimination issue, a human rights issue. And it's sad. It really is sad.
They aren't, for centuries, whose ancestors have been collected for hobby.
For hobby.
And this comes down to racism. They aren't digging white graves.
Right.
Experts determined the remains found at Miller's residence likely came from Native American tribes, including the Arikara. In North Dakota, tribal official Pete Coffey is working with the FBI to bring them home.
All too often here, we have been treated as curiosities rather than a people here.
Right.
It could very well be my own great-great-great-great-grandfather or grandmother.
Right.
You know, that had been, I characterize it as being ripped out of the earth.
Ripped out of the
Miller
earth.
died in 2015. We wanted to know what his widow thought about all of this.
Hi, Mrs. Miller?
Yes. So we went to Miller's home, where a Chinese terracotta warrior figure stood guard outside.
I can't comment on any situation at this time.
But Carpenter believes in his later years, Miller understood the ramifications of what he did.
I think he felt compelled to try to do the right thing and return these home.
Returning those Native American ancestors home, which is what Carpenter says is the FBI's most important mission now.
You have to treat these people with dignity. These are human beings and people. It matters. It has meaning to people today. It has meaning to our children and their children.
Well, so far, the FBI has already returned items from Miller's collection to several countries, including Cambodia, Canada, Colombia, and Mexico. They've already returned some Native American ancestral remains to tribes in the South Dakota region and are planning a large-scale repatriation of remains to other tribes in the coming months. Wow. It's a big project. It's going to go on for years.
A very unusual story.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about that life-size statue right outside the home when you went
The terracotta?
to go visit. Yeah, the terracotta.
Have you ever seen the terracotta soldiers in China?
No, never.
I have. They're pretty impressive.
Never.
Thank you, Anna.
To understand to the majority of the Homo sapiens onto this planet that they are fascinated by our DNA, I guess in one sense is understandable due to the fact that I truly believe that there was a missing link that survived during the ice ages that evolved with the Cocopeles and the Sphinx and other tribal groups in South America that eventually wound up coming up through the northern part of Canada and merging down here in America. We know that we have found fossils going back thousands and thousands and thousands of years, way before Christ, of these exhibits that is undeniable was here even before the originality of the King James Version Bible that only goes back 6,000. Did you hear what I just said? We have fossils here in this country that predate before the beginning factors of Genesis that we're aware of. And I have been told that the first book in the Bible that is just documented pertaining to the Bible, if it was to be put in proper sequence, should in actuality be another book before the book of Genesis, because it actually talks about prehistoric activity that went on in this book. I believe it's the book of Job. I may be wrong about that, but there is another book in the King James Version Bible that theologians have just now come to the conclusion that this book should actually be in front of Genesis. So whenever it talks about the recreation of man and how that God redesigned the earth in reforming the earth, and how that he breathed life into Adam and then took a rib from Adam's rib cage while he was in a sleep, a slumber sleep, and developed Eve. These was occurrences of putting a spirit within the body of a carnal fleshly being, because God, I think, this is an unproving statement that I'm fixing to make, but I think God looked down upon humanity during the prehistoric era of the Neanderthals, etc. And he found more favor in the being that stood upright on two legs with two arms and a head, more so than the Brontosaurus or the other well-known names pertaining to prehistoric animals, as well as the fish and the birds and the mammals, the cold-blooded mammals. He found more favor in us than he did any other being on the planet. It just so happens that those humans, if you want to call them humans, before the creation of Genesis, listen to me carefully, did not have pre-existing souls or pre-existing spirits. But as they evolved and as they got more adaptable as far as colonizing themselves with the European who come over here, eventually we figured out that these beings that are walking, talking, that has 2 ears, 10 fingers, and 10 toes, in actuality are very similar to the 12 tribes that originated after the flood, whenever Noah sent this tribe in this direction, and sent this tribe in that direction, and sent this tribe in that direction. The 12 tribes of Jerusalem. So there was another tribe. There was a missing link. And in that missing link are the very people that others find to be fascinating, because their blood type is totally different. There is no other matching blood type on the planet. So, in essence, the Indians, the Native American people, are the missing link that basically evolved, wandered, crawled, struggled in with the rest of society. We know, according to the Bible, that the Jews is God's original chosen people. It mentions that throughout the Old Testament as well as the New. We know that Jesus Christ was chosen by God, and that Jesus Christ had a Jewish descent. He was a Hebrew. He come from the Nazarene tribe. But we also know that in the teachings of the King James pertaining to what Jesus Christ himself taught, is that there would be another tribe that would be equal to the original Jewish tribe pertaining to the Gentiles. For the Bible says that the end will not come until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. It has been believed or thought of that just because the word Gentile come into play, that was those who have accepted Christ as their Lord and Savior and who had evolved in living towards and for a holy, righteous God. That's only part of it. Because in that essence, you can be a Russian Gentile, a Canadian Gentile, Mexican Gentile, an Australian Gentile, a German Gentile, of those who have accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior. I take it another step further in the bloodline. A matter of fact, just as of yesterday, I was down by Gooch's, the old Davy Crockett bottom pertaining to the hunting club right down here below me. And I had a flashback of what occurred in my life in 1983, give or take about a week and a half to 2 weeks after that I had come home before Dad went on a fit and rage towards allowing for the devil to take control of his actions. For some reason, Dad wanted to take me down to the Davy Crockett Gooch's fishing hole and us go fishing down there. I still had 64 staples up and down my belly, connecting both pieces of my skin together to keep my intestines inside my body. I remember we was out fishing down by Gooch's, and it had been cloudy that morning, and all of a sudden the clouds dissipated and here comes the sun. I don't know if it was because of the major blood transfusion that I had went through towards having 9 units of blood put back into my body, or possibly I was having some sort of a shock because of the sun. But all of a sudden I felt trillions and trillions of it felt just like needles sticking into my arms and sticking into my face, wherever the sun could directly hit my body, and even up underneath my clothes. I was just in total misery. And I started screaming and hollering, "Get me out of here, get me out of here." And I almost climbed out of the boat because I was in so much pain towards trying to get out of the sun rays because of the transformation that was going on in my body. And maybe that was what freaked my father out to the point that he decided to, instead of being my friend from then on, to be my enemy, and literally almost drove his own wife off into a state of a nervous breakdown and almost killed me by physically attacking me. I don't know. I don't know. I just know this, that I had been given 9 units of blood that did not belong to me originally. And maybe it was my body that was reacting to that, and the sun was just enhancing it. Once more, I still believe that whenever it talks about until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled, that it had to be a certain bloodline. Not to say that all the other bloodlines are not just as important, but it had to be a certain bloodline for me to be holding the position that I hold right now, pertaining to the heavenly kingdom opening up and me receiving what that I had received from the evangelical beings up in heaven, which was Jesus Christ's crown that was placed upon my head. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that if I didn't have a certain blood type, I don't think that I would have ever been permitted to have fulfilled this great honor. And of course, this great honor that I'm talking about has costed me, as far as me having to sacrifice again and again and again and again, immensely throughout the past 30 years. Immensely. It's sad that out of the 11 tribes, or 10 tribes, if you want to look at it in the tribal form, it's sad that they today still look at people such as myself as being some sort of an amusement. We do not want to be looked upon as being an amusement. We do not want to be looked upon as being a freak. We do not want to be looked upon as being abnormal. We do not want to be looked upon as being alienated from the rest of the other 10 or 11 tribes that did make it whenever Noah sent this tribe this way, that tribe this way, and another tribe this way. But that's exactly what has happened in my personal life. I haven't never shared this with nobody. This is the first time that I've ever shared this about Gooches, about going down to the waterway down here on the old Davy Crockett Hunting Club bottom and having that experience before my father turned ugly, and about 4 to 6 weeks during his ugliness literally almost drove my mother off into a state of suicide. And if it weren't for his brother, J.W. Jackson, it's possible that my father, James Robert Jackson, would have continually beat and beat and beat and beat to the point that he would have opened back up my womb and finished me off. So a lot of people in this area that still remember J.W. Jackson, that had a nickname of being Budweiser, that remember that he had a drinking habit, in which he did. He'd probably drink a couple cases a day, sometimes 3 cases a day. But he drunk that on a day-to-day, everyday level, to the point that he actually tried to stop drinking one time while he was up in Chicago running the trucking route. And he had this route that he made every day. I don't know what he was delivering, but he was driving an 18-wheeler, truck, a bob truck, going in and out of Chicago. But he quit drinking, and he almost lost his job because he quit drinking. And the reason why he almost lost his job is because he couldn't remember what roads to take and what schedule that he was supposed to have been on. And he didn't become normal until he started back drinking again, if that makes any sense. I guess the abnormal become the normal with him, to the point that he was a 100% alcoholic. But he could handle his liquor. He could drink excesses amount of beer, Budweiser, and smoke the old filterless Chesterfield cigarettes to the point that his fingers would turn to solid gold or yellow looking. I guess his body become adapted to that type of lifestyle to the point that if you tried to cut him off cold turkey, he'd fall into DPs or whatever you call it, and go into convulsions and wouldn't live but a week or two. It's hard to believe that the human body can become adaptable to such behavior, but it can. But because of the Native American culture that has been formed in my life, not only on my mother's side, but also on my father's side, and as well as the Davis side, I've got a great deal of Native American background, bloodline in my system. And whenever I see stuff like this on TV, it irks me. It irks me because it takes on the same type of persona that Hitler took on towards wanting to annihilate or eradicate the Jews from society. And of course, you don't have to be an Einstein to understand history to realize that whenever the Europeans come over here, the first thing that was targeted wasn't the bear, wasn't the moose, wasn't the elk, wasn't even the buffalo at first. It was the red man. It was the Native American red man. And if you'll study the Native American red man history, you will see books and books and books upon books that is never taught in our American history. And the reason why that it's not taught is because of the shame that has befallen the blame upon to these heathens over here that basically wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to genocide the red man from this planet. It's sad, but it's true. May God have mercy on all of us. And once more, shalom.
You've probably seen his designs on high-profile figures from Rihanna to Hillary Clinton. Fashion designer Isaac Mizrahi is in our Toyota Green Room to talk about his new memoir. Learn who he started designing clothes for when he was just 6 years old. But first, let's take a check of your local weather.
Good morning.